Diablo 3 is an action RPG dungeon crawler that gives players an engaging, satisfying, and complex gaming experience. Diablo 3 is a special kind of game that I find myself returning back to time and time again, well after I've beaten the story. For those willing to grapple with the item and skill system, they will discover a seemingly unlimited combination of gear setups, skills, and ways to go about the various dungeons in the game. Along their journey, players will experience fiery torture chambers, dark and somber cathedrals, wide open plains, desolate wastelands, and the ransacked realm of heaven. Successful players will utilize different skills, armor combinations, and battle tactics in order to defeat Diablo and the various demons throughout your journey. But which class will you choose? The wizard uses elemental abilities such as fire, thunder, and electricity to dismantle and obliterate his enemies from a distance. The wizard is more of a glass cannon, so he must keep his distance to make sure he's not overwhelmed by his enemies. The barbarian is a more up-close and personal and resilient class. This class allows the player to take much more hits and survive many situations that would melt, destroy, and cripple any other class. The main issue for barbarians is being overwhelmed in combat. The demon hunter is much like the wizard in that it's a glass cannon range class that uses more acrobatic skills in conjunction with many devices such as traps. An effective demon hunter uses their abilities to melt enemies faster than they can melt them. While not as resilient and defensive as the barbarian, the monk is able to unleash very fast attacks and heal their party and themselves. The witch doctor is the most imaginative class by far and uses a wider range of monsters and creatures such as spiders, bears, and wolves to dismantle and destroy their enemies from afar. Various menus in the game allow the player to know every single little detail about their character. What may seem tedious is actually vital to your character's survival through his journey. Each class is able to have 6 abilities queued up at one time, and there are many abilities that can be used in conjunction with one another, and the best thing about this game is that each ability has a rune, which changes the effects drastically, which makes even if you and another character may have the same skill, your characters will be totally different since you are utilizing different runes and different passives. Experimenting with the different skills is one of the most fun aspects of Diablo 3. The most important part of Diablo 3 is the item hunt. Items will allow you to venture further and further through your journey, without which you will surely die. Gear is everything, and every single elite mob, boss, and treasure chest has a chance to give the player a more powerful piece of gear. The hunt for the best items and the most useful items is the aspect of Diablo 3 that keeps players playing for hours and hours and hours. Players can also craft items from the different craftsmen in town. However, they are not the most useful. The biggest addition to Diablo 3 is the auction house system, which allows players to buy and sell ingredients, craft supplies, as well as powerful items. A player wishing to sell an item can either place it on the real money auction house for actual currency or the in-game gold auction house for in-game currency. Blizzard also takes a cut. The auction house interface is very well made, which allows players to select exactly what they need. Players that are willing to invest time in searching through the auction house will find it to be a very useful way to upgrade their gear and get further and further throughout the game. Using self-found gear is possible, but much more difficult. Back to the gameplay. This game is beautiful. Cities look vast, areas are huge, and the player actually gets a sense that they are actually in the world. The inclusion of cities deepens the immersion, allowing the player to interact with their surroundings.
In Chaldea, color means wealth. You don't want to look like a peasant.
A player that takes the time to learn their skills will discover that combat is very fluid. Whichever skills you use is up to you, but certain skills and abilities do seem to be a little bit more powerful than others. For example, a barbarian that uses revenge and rend as well as furious leap might find that combat is a little bit easier than one using a purely glass cannon melee build. That being said, with the proper gear and proper use of skills, almost any build can be successful, but not optimal. For example, this wizard, who would usually fulfill a more ranged role, is fighting very close to his enemies and taking damage and dealing even more. While the wizard excels in ranged combat, through the proper use of items and skills, the wizard can fulfill a very different playstyle. While the majority of your enemies will consist of hordes of demons, boss monsters that tower over you will contest your progress throughout the game. Many boss monsters contain abilities that can kill you in a matter of seconds. Being able to adapt is key. And remember, as bosses go, this is a little guy. However, some bosses use trickery and deception to stifle your progress. These are also some of the more difficult ones, which require the player to memorize or learn certain attack patterns. Bosses are spread out through each act to intensify the leveling experience, and each boss brings its own special and unique gameplay. However, bosses are not the biggest challenge in this game. The most challenging enemies in this game are clearly and very easily determined to be the blue elite mobs. Elite mobs are certain monsters in the game, but with a twist. They all have different abilities. These abilities can range from disabling and crowd control abilities such as freeze and jail, or even summoning walls. Others are more offensive and use powerful abilities such as arcane, which creates violently destructive orbs that will kill you in a matter of seconds. Knowing these abilities is key to survival. If not, you will die. And if you are brave enough to play on hardcore mode, death is permanent. In conclusion, Diablo 3 is for the dungeon crawler fanatic. If you are looking for a game that can easily take up 100 hours of your time, this is the game for you. Searching for that next best item is the drive that makes players keep coming back. And since the items received from monsters is random, any item can drop at any time, which leads the player to endlessly go through these dungeons in order to find the best loot to either use or to put on the auction house. However, if you are the type of gamer that likes to beat the story and stop there, this game might not be the best choice. Many avid players of the game would suggest that once you beat the actual story, that is when the game actually becomes interesting. All that being said, if you are a fan of action RPGs, this is the game to get.